I first saw Bad North in one of Nintendo's Indie Directs. The art style of the game and the strategic gameplay was enough to make me interested in it, so I didn't do much research on the game before it released. That's why I was surprised to discover the game was in fact a roguelike tower defense game of sorts, rather than the strategy game I assumed it was. Luckily, the game flow is cleverly designed in such a way to not only fit this genre, but to do so in a unique, almost therapeutic way. In a nutshell, the goal of Bad North is to travel across a sea the game generates with randomized islands. As you travel across the sea conquering islands, you must protect the buildings on them from waves of Vikings in RTS-like gameplay. Successfully defending the island rewards you with money to upgrade units, as well as possible bonus upgrades found on the island such as items or additional commanders to add to your team. And, well, that's pretty much it. It doesn't take long to figure things out, which you're sort of forced to do. You see, the game prompts you with an optional tutorial upon starting any new game, but all this does is briefly explain the controls to you. All the nuance and elements to the gameplay go completely unexplained besides occasional loading screens with useful information. A perfect example is this dotted line that appears on the island map. Is this signifying a threat getting closer to me? Do I need to avoid that line reaching me? What does it mean? Well, turns out it's simply showing you which islands will be auto-captured after the next turn. What is this symbol? Is that an enemy island? Should I avoid it? No. It's actually an island where I can gain a commander by capturing it. These were all simple to figure out on my own, but objectively speaking, the game isn't exactly intuitive when it comes to teaching new players what everything means. However, this issue doesn't plague the game in any other areas, as the core gameplay manages to find a middle ground between easy-to-understand simplicity and strategic depth without overcomplicating things. You see, you can only ever have 4 commanders on an island. These commanders are these guys holding the flags, and commanders bring with them a small squad of units that surround them. Throughout your run, you can recruit up to 8 commanders, but still, you are limited to only bringing 4 into each level. Through the upgrade system, these squads can only be one of 3 classes: archers for long range, pikesmen for holding ground in one spot, or infantry being the well-rounded class. In my early hours with the game, I feared this would end up harming the possible strategic depth the game could ultimately offer. I thought by limiting the player to just 3 classes and 4 squads per island, there would only be a small number of ways to go about your runs. However, as I continued to play, it all started to click. Yes, the game does take a very simplistic approach to classes and units, but the game is also incredibly fine-tuned around this conscious decision. Instead of placing the strategy and depth into building the ideal army like cards in a deck, the developers made the islands themselves the real star of the show. Many roguelikes use randomized worlds to prevent things from feeling repetitive, but here the feature feels much more relevant and engaging. Some islands may have isolated cliffs, a great spot for archers to pick off Vikings when approaching from the sea. Some may have narrow, bottlenecked corridors. Pikesmen will become nearly unpassable in these spots. Infantry can be upgraded to lunge down on enemies from a higher ledge, so cliffs that border a primary path will benefit them greatly. This is a game where position is everything, and combining these tactics together will ensure your island's safety. All of this results in a game where the mental effort for success is prioritized in a unique area. In my experience, tower defense games tend to eventually become very anxiety-fueled as you frantically manage everything you've gained up until that point at the same time. But here, it's always 4 squads. It's always these 3 classes. The terrain is where you put your thinking effort toward, and when you combine this with the charming minimalistic art style, you get a game that feels ironically relaxing despite all the bloodshed going on. I looked forward to ending my day in bed telling myself just a couple more islands with my Switch in hand. It's for this very reason I think the Switch is a perfect home for the game. It's worth noting the touchscreen controls on the Switch are phenomenal as well, and are possibly the ideal way to play the game. I've been praising the game a lot, but there are some setbacks that have to be addressed. I came across more performance issues than I'd like to admit, such as audio glitches or significant menu lag for a few seconds. Or I mean, what is this here? But these were definitely more common when playing in handheld mode. Also, considering how much time you spend waiting for enemy boats to reach shore, I think the game would have really benefited from a fast forward button when you already have your units in place. It would just significantly improve the overall pace of the gameplay. Luckily, this and the bare bones tutorial mentioned earlier are the only true complaints I have. Sometimes less is more, and few games personify that as well as Bad North does. By purposely simplifying unit variety and abilities, it allows the maps themselves to be the basis of all strategies. A smart decision which makes the randomly generated feature of the game more enjoyable. Instead of feeling like an RTS and tower defense game where forced to work as a roguelike, it feels as if the developers took the opposite approach, asking themselves, how do we borrow elements from those genres to enhance our core gameplay? It may have a few performance issues now and then, but if you're looking for a game to sit back and chill out to, $15 toward Bad North is a solid investment. For all these reasons, Bad North gets an 8 out of 10.